Pink Cloud Radio 81. Now, as we begin down this road, this treacherous road, the double steel imperial dragon, the death king of this whole thing, and the second-hand man. What we've experienced before is the second-hand man. Being the tool to the end for a person that's not willing to fight them off. Like a dick in a glass jar. Maybe some of you have gone through this, being the second-hand man. It's easy, really. Has to do with fighting things off that are abusive, callous, ill-natured, jealousy, basically the frame of who you are, the foundation. Creating basically a bad path no matter what, and saying that this is a good path but I'm not going to use it. You know, that dick in a glass jar, I'll break it when it's useful. Well, if it's not useful now, it'll never be useful. It's one thing I've learned about being the tool to the end for a person that's not willing to fight them off. I'm not a tool, though. You know, and I think that's the whole consistency that I've had. That, for example, if someone were to say you got to fight that person off, you have to win the fight. You know, that's what creates the competition, the method of psychology that people make. Of like, that's the only way I'm going to be with you. Then I don't want to be with you. If that's the only way you'd be with me, then that's not love. That's not something that would build a good foundation. In fact, that would probably build the most scary foundation. The scariest, the most fearful, the most constrained foundation. Because you're using a lot of excitement and a lot of, you know, being fearful and afraid to make something that matters to you. Well, first off, you wouldn't use those kind of things to implement and understand who you are. You know, if you do, then you're so isolated from even your individuality that it would be hard to shape that heart to love. I think that's the thing that creates a lot of things between people. Being a second-hand man or just trying to integrate something that's important into somebody is not just going to happen. So when I hear people say like fate, that's why I don't really use fate. Because I think that using those ideals, that fate will somehow, you know, create that balance, it's not necessarily true. But it doesn't mean that it won't. It just means that there has to be something more that's valued. There you go. That's the first step. You got to value the person. You know, being a second-hand man is obviously not valued. If you're a dick in a glass jar, it's not like the person next to you is going to be like, well, I love this person so much, they're a dick in a glass jar for me. That goes with any relationship. In fact, that's why I have empathy. Because I feel that if I understand myself, then I'll be able to know, hey, you know, I'm not sharing that much with you. Which means that I can't share that much with you and you're not the right person for me. I think that's why I've learned that, you know, I'm probably not gay or anything like that. Because I've seen how I've related in those ways, and I haven't done that much exclusively. So that means that there is something in me that notices these things. Whether it's attachment, whether it's being afraid. Probably not. I'm scared, but I'm not really afraid of anything. Put any condition in front of me, there's no phobia I have. Because I wouldn't blame it like that. In fact, that's just being an asshole if you have that kind of phobia. I think there's an awkwardness, though, you know, that people aren't willing to tell these people. That's why people say, oh, just fight the person, because they're not willing to tell them. Well, to me, it's more important to say it. I think so. I think it's difficult, but it's very important to say it. And I think that's what I've learned now to this point, especially being a second-hand man, which I have been at times. You know, and there's only so much you can do to bring that. You know, to accept it, to use it, to be a part of it. You know, that you can't really be a tool. You know, I think that's the whole point of what rebellion, rising up, what we call, you know, people protesting and things like that. It's a point where people see past the selfish. But the problem is, most of the time, they don't use it in a non-selfish way. They use it in a very selfish way. And are approximated to just be okay with things after that. Oh, I'm okay now. You know, I can take the hit, but that's the problem. If we only take the hits, the people in charge always get the upper hand. always use that upper hand, So when we say that we respect everybody in the top positions, why should we? They're not giving up anything. There's a big difference between what we see as giving up versus what's actually happening. And I think that's the difference, is that we can continually say, well, there has to be something better. But we can't find it in the people that already have the best. Obviously they wouldn't know, because they wouldn't. First off, even if they had lived in our positions, it matters what they're doing now to the people in those positions that they were in. If they're treating them like shit, then obviously they're counterproductive to even fix the problem or take care of those people. In any position we're in, people say you have to be, top dog, you have to fight, you have to do everything you can. The thing is, though, if all you're doing is chomping, you ain't doing nothing. You're not, And you can continually say that you are and believe it so much, that the capitalistic free market that isn't free, if it was free, there wouldn't be compartmentalization, everything would pretty much be open to the public. People in top positions wouldn't decide what's in the public interest. We would. And I think that's what is infallible, is that we continually agree to these things, to be preconditioned without even creating our own conditions for life, without creating our own rules, laws, our own regulations. What we can do by ourselves is do that. But a lot of times most people don't want to. They're afraid to. They're afraid to even speak up for what they value and don't value. Well, if my government doesn't value that, then I better not either. And I think that's where we've learned the timid line of what the world is. To me, the whole world pretty much looks the same. From China to United States, to North Korea to Cuba, to Australia to Russia. You could look at any part of the world and I'd say, well, it looks the same to me. It's a single shot, and that's the problem. If it's a single shot, it's not creating humane tactics, humane surroundings. It starts with blood and ends with blood. And so, just like the dick in the glass jar, you have to break yourself out no matter how many wounds you get. And I think that's what is the perpetration of what our lives is. We can either stand at a stalemate with things, which most people do, and in fact they go back even further. They let the line in the sand get smaller and smaller, and gives them less and less and less. And they're in the one corner going like, man, this is all I got. This is the line in the sand that I won't cross. And now I lost everything because I didn't cross that line. That I even made the line at all is the problem. That I stayed inside the box is the problem. That I even made a box. And I think that's what really is the second-hand man. It's really the fuel for the fire. And it's the, I can take the hit. Being strong doesn't necessarily mean you have to show off your capabilities. I need to show my aggression. I need to show it. No, not at all. That's not the strength, And I think that's what is the issue that I've seen, and probably why most relationships, whether it was a friendship or more, didn't work. Because a lot of people asked for something that was something not in them. And truly, when you're in this part of the world, in this institution of the world that's been created, pretty much, you don't really have much to give if you're not giving yourself. Meaning that if you're not understanding yourself and knowing how to speak, and you're saying, somebody else speak for me. It's not about your weaknesses and strength, it's about what you truly mean to say. If you're not saying what you mean to say, then you're still going to act on it, whether or not you say it or not. Which means that you're a liar, and you won't deal with something directly. It's pretty easy, it's pretty easy to learn that tool. I mean, we've seen it every day with politicians, with everything that you say, with the brainwashing, so to speak, And I think about that. Is it good or bad? Can blaming for brainwashing be the answer to actions, or are all people brainwashed and nobody can be right except for themselves? Meaning that this brainwashing idea, when people say, oh, that person's brainwashed, is it good or bad? Well, first off, you have to handle the capability of the fact that if brainwashing at all is happening, that means that what you're thinking about isn't yours. to begin with? Well, there's a lot that isn't ours to begin with. So when we learn in schools, when we learn in some kind of place, in some kind of person stuff, we're learning the exact same thing. The only difference is you're learning it on a massive scale or on a small scale. Well, what's the massive scale? Are they telling the truth there? Did they start with the truth there or no? Or did they lie to everybody as like a bunch of tyrants and take over with treasonous acts? If we could find another story, and pretty much people won't talk about it or keep silent when they hear that part, then there is some truth in something that they haven't conferred yet and haven't confronted themselves yet. Which means that brainwashing in general can make you more ashamed. And not only ashamed, but make you have no confrontation at all. In fact, you just win because you won't face something. And if nobody faces things in a majority scale, then pretty much that's not really an issue because everybody agrees. But see, that's the thing that really shows that brainwashing itself, what you're telling people, if it's a lie, does not help anything. In fact, it's a recommendation to say, let the evil perspire. All we have to do is tell people we did the right thing. And everybody's okay with that. If we have to make up a story, everybody's okay with that. If we have to change history, everybody's okay with that. And I think, can blame for brainwashing be the answer to actions? Of course, for a lot of people in power, they do that a lot. Well, that person was brainwashed by that religion. Are you sure it was that religion? It's just like looking at, when I go back to what happened in my lifetime, I could look at the Oklahoma City bombing. McVeigh said that it was retaliation for what happened at Waco in 1994. Oh, maybe it was earlier than, maybe it was 92. But anyway, if it was in retaliation for something that he saw as pretty much, something that was created and made by the people in charge and the people that went in and killed those people, then there may be more questions to why would they do that. And now, McVeigh himself, do we know that he worked alone? Do we know that he wasn't brainwashed to do this in some form or another? Or are we just going to believe that, oh, well, it's probably some outside entity. We wouldn't do that to our own country. Well, we did that before. We did that to many citizens in World War II with the Japanese internment camps. But I think it's hard for people to live in that sullen void of what is the real answer. Because once you look at that real answer, then who can be your friends? Who can be somebody you trust? You'd rather have somebody who's abusive to you that you can trust than no one at all. Because at least you have someone there that will still catch you until they don't. Because pretty much that's what happens with brainwashing. Is it good or bad? I think it's bad. But is it impossible to be without brainwashing? Probably. We live in a world based on a system that's been created and concocted and failed so many times before. But the point of it is there's a system around us. There's a system around us that's here right when we were born. Right when I was born, it was here. So when we look at what's been created versus what could have been versus what is, and when we try to catalog or try to get something more out of it, we don't really try to transform what's here. We just say, well, everybody's brainwashed. And that's our answer for it. We don't look deeper. We don't look non-deeper. We just say, well, it's there. And that's in itself is an answer to just say, well, we can't do anything about it. And that in itself is like, nobody can be right except for themselves. So we can't ask anybody else. But see, the thing is, that's fine. If we're okay with ourselves, that should be it. But that isn't it. There's a lot more to it. If the majority of people are afraid of everybody, except for the people that hurt them the most, because, well, it can't get any worse than that, then that means that those people are going to do worse to the people that are trying to show them, hey, don't believe those people. Don't believe those people that you just sit there believing. You got to stop that. So if somebody's trying to show that to the world, they're not going to be liked for it. Oh no, don't trust that person. That person shouldn't be trusted. And I think that's the thing that we live in consistently, is the image of, well, brainwashing is bad, but only if everybody else's is bad. And only if this amount of people that are okay with certain corruptions and abuses to reflect upon what are the bad ones, pick and choose. And I think that's the adorable thing about this thing. There's a lot of naivete in this. And it's to me, it's hilarious, but it's hilarious not with sarcasm or cynicism to make fun of. It's hilarious that people would objectively believe that they're going to be saved, that they're going to be respected and tolerated by people who have turned them over and upside down. You don't really find a collective enthusiasm to be left alive in that, even if you are right now. And I think that's what we live by, the tender last moments. Even if we don't have them, they're right there. And I think that's the thing that gets people to be in a depressed mode, in a negative mode, in a sort of, I don't like this, and that's it mode. Because, that's it. And if you live by the ends, that means your means to produce anything are totally done. You don't need to worry about anything. The brainwashing is done. At a certain point, you've basically allowed brainwashing to occur. Because you concurred with almost every single thing that people said. Okay, that's fine, I could take that. Nodding, and that's it. You might as well be asleep. You don't even need to speak your voice, because you're just a void. And you just avoid, you don't consider it that you need to speak up. You just consider what you need to, and that's it. And what it boils down to. But that's the thing, if you boil down to nothing, there's nothing else to give. And I think that's the thing that I've seen that really creates what the society has become. Society and so-called civilization. To me, that really constructs with what I just said about being the second-hand man. If we're supposed to be in a situated form represented, then it comes from us. It can't come from another person. It can't come from another institution. It can't come from really a company, a corporation, the states, the people in charge in the states, the representatives. It can't come from those things. Because truly, there's a different faculty of mind. I don't think my faculty of mind is represented in the government. I've never heard a single thing that was ever spoken that made it sound like this person is thinking like a human like I do. In fact, I feel mostly that they're dark residue of nothing. There's a meaningless robotic machine in what they say. There's not really a harpoon of heart in that. It feels like they're pretty much killing all the whales. That's what it sounds like to me. It doesn't sound like love to me. And I think that's the justification for a lot of people. At least, they're not showing love, but I'm used to that. I don't get it from anybody else, and the person I will get it from, they're the problem. Because, no, we have to think the same. I can't take when somebody actually shows the love to me, because I'm used to not having shown the love. I'm used to somebody abusing me, bruising me, hurting me, opening a wound that won't close. If I try to fix anything, then nothing will be okay. It actually means you will be okay, but the thing that justifies or that clarifies a lot of people is they don't need to worry about themselves. That's it, and brainwashing in itself is just a part of what they want to create. They want to allow that because it makes it easy on them. I don't need to worry about anything, I'm just being brainwashed. And I think that's the real thing that really has a handle on people, is that once you accept the road of answer to actions, but don't answer to yourself. Just answer to actions, and those answers aren't your own. Those answers are somebody else's or something else's, and you just believe it based on the whim of what everybody else is. Then you're already, as with what's been called, oh, that's just a conspiracy theory. Well, conspiracy plus action equals, there you go, conspiracy in action. Meaning that what has happened has been created through the multiple dominant scale. Meaning that what was done was to create more dominance, more power, more control. And in the eyes of many, well, they just, they know how to manipulate the system. And in a lot of ways, that's the coverage that makes it clean. Like, oh, it's okay. They know, it's dog eat dog here. And that's our sublimation of mercy for the people in power. But do they have that kind of mercy for us? Why would they? We don't have power. And I think that's the big thing that really creates this idea of brainwashing, where they can say, that's brainwashing, not me. Well, why should I believe you? You have no mercy for people. I think that's the thing that justifies the God in government in a lot of ways, that people selectively accept. Selectively, meaning they just accept that one. When they look at somebody else and see the difference in that they don't do that, well, you have no power, At least they're not, at least they're being honest about their deceptions. Actually, they're not. They've lied to you consistently through each presidency. Through each promise that's been made before a presidency is even acknowledged, is done, is set up, is put in position. So there's that understanding that you're already being lied to before you even see the picture come into fruition. So you've accepted the dominance of somebody that you know is going to lie to you and not do that anymore. And just say they will and they don't. And I think that's what is the frugalness of humans. They don't really attach themselves to something good. Not because there's some kind of faculty of mind that gets you closer to something bad or evil or whatever. It's that it's an easy way out. I think that's what truly it feels like. When I hear this, when I see this stuff every day, it's almost like the naivete isn't even close to what these people are doing. But these people truly believe that one person is not going to lie when it's been done over and over again like this. And I think that's what was said when Malcolm X said, chickens come home to roost, when the equal vibe of contradictions and displaying action without any reaction to take responsibility. We could do anything we want, and we don't need to be responsible for it. There you go. So, if somehow we start a war based on a lie, or based on something that we don't have full proof and evidence of, we don't need to worry, because we don't need to take responsibility. So, at that basic level, we don't need to do anything. So if somebody gets killed, like Kelly Thomas, well, don't worry, we don't need to take responsibility for that. And nobody gets any bad coverage, and nobody goes to jail that badly. Just a few years, at the most. And I think that's the big treasonous act within what we see. You could treat the lowest of low, meaning in a social pattern of what we call classism, at any scale. You could throw them as long as you want. Or if somebody is showing and exposing the things that are done behind the scenes, throw them away for good, or kill them. Or make it look like they committed suicide. There you go. But we have to believe it. At that point right here, if you look irksome, if you have that cringe on your face when I've said look like they committed suicide, then you personally believe that our government would tell you the truth about something like that. That they would honestly tell you, well, we didn't want them to be dead. Who said that? Pretty much. They've said that about all whistleblowers. Anybody who exposes anything. So when you look at Edward Snowden and you look at some of the others that so-called committed suicide, are you ever going to ask the question of, well, were they psychologically like that? Of course not. It's right there in front of you, so there's no point to looking deeper. And I think that's the genuflection to most people. There's no point in looking any more deeper. Anything that's given to us must show us what the world is like. Well, knowledge is not only power. Knowledge is the source of what we see the world as, if we want to see it like that. Truly, I don't think knowledge is power. Not if we're not being told everything. Not if we're withheld information because of public interest. Well, public interest has to be kept a certain way for the people in power. So of course they're going to say it's in public interest, because we want the public to think in the interest of government, not in the interest of getting rid of this government. And I think that's the tool that we call, to create the equal vibe of contradictions. As long as you could contradict and mismanage life and be hypocritical, then it's okay for the people in charge to do it, As long as you see it and you can do it yourself, you're fine. But when you see somebody being honest and truthful, you can't do it yourself, so you're going to put them down. The negativity is going to soar because you won't want to deal with it and say, no, I don't want to deal with that. No, I don't want to deal with that. You're evil, you're bad. The labels come out like nothing. Bullying, revenge, the whole thing just pops out like nothing, like contorting, like the spinning of wheels of a car every day. It's continuous because you can't deal with something that somebody else can. And I think that's the big tool, the advantage that people don't see. If you're not going to deal with your own responsibilities of who you are as a person, and just look at it from the perspective of, well, they decided this for me, or they put this in the condition for me, or they put me in this place, then what's the point of living? I'm not even putting that in a distorting view, although most people could take it like that. That what I'm saying is, chickens come home to roost. Well, they come home to roost, all right, but most likely they come home to roost because they don't want to make their own. They don't want to choose their own actions of what they do to the rest of everything else. They don't need to take responsibility because at least they got a home to come to. And that's the whole point. At least I got a job. That's the biggest line I've ever heard all the time in my lifetime. At least they give me a job. Yeah, but it matters how they treat you, not about that they give you a job. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't see when they look at the capitalistic system and they try to defend this so-called free market, which isn't really a free market if competition is killed, eaten up, and taken the value from and pushed into another thing. That's not a free market. A free market does not systematically disrupt and control the economic systems all over the world. That's what the stock market does, and, free market wouldn't be making money and a profit off of just the system itself. And I think that's the clinging torture device. The brazen bull has put, I think that's what the bull, the gold bull is at in New York at the Wall Street. The bull represents the brazen bull to me. It represents the torture device that's going to be used to disintegrate the human condition, the human life, the humane thinking, the humane person. It's a very easy trap. I don't need to worry about anything. But once you stop worrying about anything, there's humanity gone. And it's not even worrying about, I worry about what's going to happen to me. No. When you stop worrying about what happens to everybody else, that's when you lose it. I don't care about anybody else. Very personal. Obviously something hurt you. Obviously someone hurt you. But if you use that as your tenderness for the rest of everybody else, in fact yourself, you got nothing to worry about. Your humanity's gone. Don't worry. I won't lash out. You know why? Because it didn't matter that that person did it to me. They would have done it to somebody else if they didn't do it to me. That's why I don't see it personal in that aspect, because they would have done it to somebody else anyway. And they probably have. In this life, I can't look at that as a torture device for myself. No, thank you. You could kill me, you could disintegrate me, you could basically capitulate any volume of thought to the rest of the people about what I do, what I think, how I say. But when they listen to me, they're going to hear me. They may not want to, but they'll hear it. They may cringe, they may be disallowed, but they'll hear it. And I think that's what the Death King is. He says, I'm not afraid of love, I'm not afraid of death. You can't quicken the pace of a society by saying that you can't think that way. You can't make a society better by saying that. In fact, that shows that you're basically showing that the only responsibility you have to have is to shut people down for what they think. And it's like what's been said for a long time in our world. You're like so many grown-ups. You cause trouble, but you never want to fix it up. I just can't understand how an important person like you can be so mean. It's a great line. So from one of my cartoon movies I watched as a kid too, Dot and the Whale, I think. And it was about this businessman who didn't want to help the girl take the whale from the beach, since it was beached whale. since it was a beached whale, and move it to the to move it to the water park, or where they had like where they had like a pool where they could have kept the whale at least. Well, it wasn't a pool; it was more like a park, I guess, that had animals in it, and that was one of the areas of the place. Right there, though, is the whole point of it. If you're flaunting position, if I must say so that way, and I must, because truly you can see that somebody can do that. That if you're going to be like so many grown-ups and not try to make a very strong, caring institution, person, value, if you're not determined to be humane, you're just like all the other grown-ups. And I think that's what I've seen in my society. Whether or not they want to say, express it or not, what they basically have created has been the exact same thing that you've seen everywhere. When you cause trouble but you never want to fix it up. It's a big one, and that's where what I've said before is happening. If you have a second-hand man, if you in fact have the brainwashing, not taking responsibility, that in itself, if you don't want to fix up something, it pretty much means that you don't want to take the blame. And I think that's the thing within our conditioned value, that, oh no, we didn't do anything here, it's not our fault. They shouldn't have done that to us. Maybe there's other stuff that happened that you weren't told by the people in power. Maybe they want you to feel that way, that it wasn't our fault. So everybody will just fall to arms and say the justice is in the hands of the people that know they're not, that know they're innocent. What about the people that aren't so innocent? When we look at that, we're terrified by the implications, because it means that we're responsible too. And I think that's what really is the justification for a government. It makes it okay to not be responsible at all. So even if there is a conspiracy, even if there is inside jobs or false flag events, anything like that, the responsibility doesn't fall in our arms. So it makes it easy for us to say, well, I don't need to fix this up. Yeah, I know they lie, but once you say but, you truly don't care about humans. Pretty much, you'll let all the humans die as long as you don't die from the lie. But even you'll die from the lie, and you'll be okay with that, because at least now it's all gone. I don't need to worry about anything else now. And I think I just, as the girl said, I just can't understand how an important person like you can be so mean. Well, not only mean, but there's a huge amount of infiltration between what people will do for that kind of, not only competitiveness, but what will gain a huge uniformity in people. Uniformity in people doesn't need to be in what they wear. It's how they think. How they think. Not what they think, how they think. If they're thinking in one way that's very accessible to you, then you can make them believe anything they want. And that's what most people do, because it makes it easy. Like for me, for example, if I'm right all the time, how will I feel when I'm wrong? Well, I'll learn a lot. But what if you're always right? How do you feel about the world? Well, you can't feel much for the world because they want to be wrong. Yeah, but I just can't keep on doing things the way somebody else does them. You don't have to. I highly doubt you do anyway. Yeah, I think that's the thing. People get so upset that other people are doing what they want to do, and they can't because they're doing what they want to do. But that's not the point of living. You're going to deal with people who want you to be like them. All you have to do, you don't have to rebel, you don't have to comply. You just see what they do, you understand it, you appreciate the value that they put in something, and then you move on. And I think that's the thing between what we see and what we get. If we only get upset by what is being there, what has been there, what is the chain of events that creates that, then all we're going to see is the necessary devaluement of who we are. We will never value who we are because nobody else is like you. So you can't value who you are unless you see somebody else like you. Well, that's the whole problem right there. If you don't value yourself based on the fact that you are yourself, then you'll never be yourself. Then you'll never be happy with yourself. And that's the thing that I've seen preconditioned in a lot of people, that They're brought up basically to self-depreciate and to change into anybody else because it makes it easy. You know, no more having to deal with being a second-hand man anymore because all you do is lie. So even if you are a second-hand man, you won't be a second-hand man because only truth tellers are second-hand men. And I think that's the thing that I've seen in our society is that we've accepted the fact that people will be second-hand men. But we won't, you know, and it's that, you know, I'm pretty useless kind of attitude unless you try to see something truthful too. If you just want to see this as a lie, that I'm making this up, that I'm putting myself in this position to be ridiculed by everybody in the world, in this huge media manipulation society, in this mass media, you know, ideal of what we should be appreciated in, not devalued in, then you're stupid. I just have to say that. If you think somebody is that, you know, in causality, we don't look at things and go, I want to be hated. I want to be hated by everybody. I want to be reviled. But people believe that so much. You know, we've been indoctrinated in that way too. We look at the cartoons we see, and we see people laughing in this spotified image of a devil with red horns, and all red, you know, with the tail, and think that, well, somebody who's bad, you know, is going to do that, is going to act that way. And that's the thing that we've been justified to believe in. That something in a Hollywood dream factory, in any dream factory in the world, that's the way those people are. But in fact, that's not even the closest of how people think when they do something. There's always an answer to why. The problem is we don't ask the questions. We just say, well, it must be because they're bad and crazy. There's always answers, but we don't look deep enough. We just say, well, we don't need to look deeper because I don't want to become that person. Well, then you will, because you have to look deeper to understand. The psychology, the philosophy of our life is going to be very important. And if we don't look at that, if we don't value that, if we don't try to understand it, then we're just going to be a tool for somebody else's end. And it may be a liar's end. But, you know, it's the old ideal of, well, it can't get any worse than that. If they're lying to me, then I know they're lying to me. And I think that's the thing about most people, is that it's easy to do that. It makes brainwashing a very, you know, not a nice thing, not a good thing, but a good tool to use. Because people will be okay with it, as long as I survive. But see, that's the thing that we've been brought up with too, is that Darwinism of, you know, survival of the fittest. You don't need to be a fittest to survive. All you need to do is listen to every rule. That's it. You don't need to be fit at all. In fact, if you're unfit, don't worry, you'll fit in pretty easily. In fact, you'll fit in very easily, because all you need to do is just listen to the rules. And listen to the rules being changed. Well, it's not too bad. They didn't change it too much. In fact, they changed it a lot and you don't recognize it because you feel unfit and you fit in. And I think that's the thing that really catches people's eyes, that, oh man, you know, I could fit in there. If that's the only reason you do something, wow. You don't got much to live for, because your own individuality is not being expressed in that. All that's being expressed is that you can fit in. That's all. Nothing more, nothing less. And I think that's the whole point. It's you get nothing more, nothing less than a home, than having that place to stay in. You get nothing more, nothing less. Well, that's not freedom. And I think that's the thing that I've seen, like, you know, not taking responsibility. Just doing what's being told, just having that bold image of what is there. And I think that's the thing that really makes it, you know, that makes it easy for people to tolerate being a grown-up and being an asshole. To say it honestly, you know, you're like so many grown-ups. You cause trouble, but you never want to fix it. But we never ask sometimes. You know, I think that's the thing that really creates a bad image of people. We don't ask them. Well, why did this happen? Oh no, they're lying. They're lying, like Gaddafi. Oh, he's lying. You know, cutting him off when he's on the media, and cutting him off. Don't let him speak. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying. Maybe that's why they cut him off, because he's speaking too much of a truth. People don't just change in 2 years and start lying to people. Just to be fair. because he worked with USA, which means that he did something that they didn't like. He went his own way, and they, of course, our own United Nations, Federal Reserve Bank, Council on Foreign Relations wouldn't like that at all. You do something on your own? No, you have to use us. U.S. But it isn't just U.S. It's hard to determine where it comes from, but it's not hard to determine who did it. You look at the people more individually, you find a lot of people in powerful positions, whether it's with the tool of money, how much value they have in this world, in that form, can really create a suppression of outlet. Most people won't be able to speak. That's not freedom. Everybody should be able to speak. And I think that's what I've seen that's happened, an important person wouldn't be so mean to do that. But they are. In fact, they're more than mean. They're harvesting the individual and saying that you have to do things this way. This is the way we built you. This is the way we built this world. Go along with it. Thanks, but I've had enough of it. Don't feel justified to be suicidal. This world isn't meant for that. But there's a lot of ways to feel depressed about it, and a lot of people do. It's very easy to. It's very easy to idealize, I can't take it anymore. It's very easy to do that. As a Death King, I'm not afraid of love, therefore I'm not afraid of death. The only difference is I may not be represented for anywhere else, and that's fine. I don't need to be. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people would bring up to me is that, well, no one's going to represent that. That's fine. Am I asking for that? The rest of the world asks for that. The rest of the people that are insecure ask for that. I've never asked for that. I've never asked for anybody to represent me. In fact, that's the worst thing to ask for. There's no one that can represent me. I would want them to represent themselves. Thank you very much. If I wanted somebody else to represent me, then I wouldn't be asking them to be themselves. I'd be asking them to be me. And I don't want them to be me. I want them to be themselves. I want them to be happy with that. If they're not happy with that, then there is no freedom and there is no institution of a free world. It's just an order. It's just an ordered world. And it's an ordered world that was ordered before I came in to it. Just another systematic device used as any means to contradict the people that actually speak up about it and say, whoa, this isn't you. This isn't you. When people hear that, oh man, they run away. They stray. They run away. I go off the edge. If you stray, I go off the edge because it ain't for me. It ain't for me to decide your ideals. If you don't look at yourself and say there's something of value in here, and if you discourage yourself to say there is nothing else in here for me to do, well, then you don't need to look at me for answers, or anybody, in fact. Most people would probably say that's good, because then you're manageable. You're manageable, meaning that you're manageable to control. Not manageable to be who you are, manageable to just be controlled and manipulated, and you just understand everything everybody else says and you're okay. Everything's okay. All the business is good. As long as the business is good, well, see, that's what I mean. It's not about violence or destruction or protest. It's about not seeing the value of something that truly doesn't value you. Basically, turn the table. If you're not being valued by something or someone or something above or represented in that true way of who you are as an individual, not represented in the way of, them thinking like you do or anything else, but represented truly. You don't see that? Don't believe in it. Once people stop believing in that thing around them, that's when they got true freedom. Because the system doesn't exist once you don't believe it. Once you don't believe that it's there. Once you don't believe that it really is important. If you turn away from it and say bye-bye. Because that's what's going to happen eventually, And that's what probably other countries that may not be supporting any war or invasion is going to be like. No thanks. We don't need to defend you guys. Look what you did to us. There you go. So you better start thinking early. Do you want to shower in yourself, or do you want to shower in the blood of everybody else? So take care, guys. Love to you all.